Sometimes your body might betray you, and you may have so much to lose. But if you pay attention and you just take some action, you realize it's all in your mind. It's in your mind, so mind your health. It's in your mind, so mind your health. Your physical is essential, but your mind is super special. So mind your health.
Welcome to Mind Your Health, where there is no health without emotional health. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy that you're here with us every Thursday evening. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, send the link to everyone, share, like. We just want you to be a part of this EJC family and a part of the Mind Your Health family. My name is Leslie Ann Lyons, if you're not aware, and I am your host for this evening. We're going to be talking about the pandemic, COVID-19, the joys, the stresses, the struggles, the challenges, and what we've overcome so far. Before we get any further in this program, however, we're going to have our scripture and our prayer at this time.
Our scripture passage is taken from Psalms chapter 32, verse 7. Thou art my hiding place. Thou shalt preserve me from trouble. Thou shalt compass me about with songs of deliverance. Let us pray. Divine God and our Father, I ask, O Lord, now that you come near. Draw nigh unto us and hear our cry. I bow before you right now, asking for deliverance for your people, for everyone tuned in to our program, that as they watch, as they listen, that they will feel your Holy Spirit, and that they will get that blessing that they seek from you. There are many who are crying out to you, Father. They need comfort. These are troubling times. There are many crying out to you for healing. There's so many among us who are sick. There are so many crying out to you, Father, for provision. There are many who have lost jobs or find it hard to get work, mouths to feed and bills to pay, and they don't know where the next dollar is coming from. But you, Lord, own a cattle on 1,000 hills, and you can provide. So I pray, Father, that you'll provide and that you'll heal, that you'll comfort. Forgive us of our trespasses and help us to turn our foot away from temptation. Help us not to yield when Satan lies to us and leads us astray. We are your sheep, and your sheep know your voice. Come and save us, Father. I ask that at the end of this program, Lord, someone will make a decision to come and serve you and call you their Lord and Master. For all of us listening tonight, I pray that you will see to our individual needs and bless, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
I'm so glad that you're here with us this evening as we discuss something that has affected everyone, from the child right up to the elderly, the female, the male. Every single person has been affected by this pandemic. And we're going to have a discussion with some lovely individuals this evening. And at this time, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with the person here with me on set. Please tell us your name and a little bit about yourself.
All right, so my name is Cassania Loud, and I am 19, and I'm from the Harborview SDA Church.
Thank you so much for joining us, Cassania. And we have someone joining us on Zoom. Please, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Roxanne White, a student at the Northern Caribbean University and a self-proclaimed mental health advocate.
Ah, lovely. Self-proclaimed mental health advocate. I love that. All right, so guys, let's just start off by talking about the initial reactions to COVID-19. I know people were doing various things when Was that March 10th or 11th? March 11th? Yeah, when that date hit, we're doing various things. Tell me, what was happening in your mind when COVID-19 came to Jamaica?
Well, it was a Thursday. March 11 was around a Thursday.
Mhm.
And I was in class and we had work to do, right? And that's when we heard about the first patient and how it was getting out of control. So we heard that school wasn't keeping the Friday. And of course, at first, I was it was not something that I expected, not being at school, which I'm at school like every single day, and being at home, trying to handle the last project of the semester. And it was total chaos trying to move from one environment and adapt to this environment and to move to the other. It was quite crazy and quite uncomfortable for me.
Uncomfortable. I love the use of that word right there. Roxanne, talk to me. What was your initial experience like?
My initial response, I was like, oh my God, one more thing in life to deal with. I had come into 2020 with some trauma from the previous years, and I was just trying to get into the flow of things. And I'm like, 2020 is the year. 2020, I'll be able to move past that and change things, processes that come with losing your car. You know, you need to go to the insurance company and all of that thing. So when COVID came, it really came and it disrupted that process, to be honest. And on top of that, I had a course doing called event planning. So, you know, that just sent everybody into panic mode because we were wondering what would we do in order to get our grade. And it was just chaos. Let's put it like that. Chaos.
I think, did both of you use that word? Did both of you say it was chaos?
Yeah, I said chaos.
Yeah, because it seems that everybody was in a similar place when it comes to that initial step. I can tell you when the announcement was made that day, my housemates and I, we actually needed to go to the supermarket for a while. And so we were just going to do our regular grocery shopping. And I went to the supermarket and everybody was there. Like literally the place was packed. People were like rushing to get stuff. The toilet paper aisle was practically empty. There were no sanitizers left. So it was a really like hectic space, I think, for everyone when you just found out what was happening with the pandemic. But tell me, what happened next? After the first day, the first week, maybe the first 2 weeks, what was that initial maybe two or so months like?
All right. So for me, I had a project due, and this was the most important course that I'm doing at UTech. And I had a project due at the end of this April. And doing it, as I said before, it was a new environment at home. I was not used to doing work at home at all. You can ask anybody. I do work at school, and that's where I feel most comfortable doing my work. And trying to get everything done in those 2 months, finishing the project and preparing for final exams, I just wanted to give up. I was not at a comfortable place in my life. I just wanted to give up. And when I was not doing work, I was having thoughts. I was thinking, I was trapped with my thoughts that I couldn't let go of.
Right.
And I feel like everything that I suppressed years before or days before even were coming right at me and were like throwing me left, right, and center. And I really had to deal with it right now because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I never have anything else to distract me.
Right.
So I really had to face my issues head on.
Roxanne, what about you?
When she talked about not being able to run from the issues, I had to smile because that was a part of my reality. Prior to COVID coming, I was in Mandeville. I was trying to get an apartment because, as I said, I had some setbacks the previous year and I was just trying to readjust, trying to pivot. When that happened, I ended up moving back home. Now, being the age that I am, which I won't say right now, I expected to be further. So initially coming home felt like I was reversing instead of moving forward. So that was something I needed to deal with. And on top of that, we were in the process of planning for final projects. So I mentioned event planning being one of the big things that I had to do. I had a final event to do for my evaluation. And the members of my group, some of them were they had that frantic kind of energy. They were all over the place, fretting, talking about how we were going to fail the course, and it was just madness. And on top of that, because persons recognize me as a mental health advocate, because I've been sharing about my mental health journey for the past 2 or so years, you had a lot of people messaging me. So not only did I have to be dealing with my own things, I know had the responsibility or the opportunity. At that time, it felt like a burden and not an opportunity. But I had the burden then of also walking people through this uncertain time. And quite frankly, at a point in time, I was just like, I'm tapping out. I'm done. I don't care if I fail this course. I don't care if people think I'm unreliable. I just don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting because I keep thinking that everybody had very similar experiences or everybody had the same experience, when that wasn't necessarily the case for everybody. I mean, maybe for the three of us here, those first few months were rough. But I think there are others who may have had different experiences. So we asked the question, what has your pandemic experience been like? And these are some of the responses we got. One person said a whole roller coaster. They said highs and lows, achievements and disappointments. It's been a whole lesson. One person said profitable, and I was surprised by that response. I was like, profitable? I can't agree on this. Someone else said a true faith experience. Another person said, honestly, maybe a 7 out of 10. I could survive again and I'd probably repeat it. And somebody else said not too shabby. So I think it's really interesting to see how we were all dealing with the same issue, but we had different experiences because of it. And I think that stems very much from, the way we think, the way we process things. Everyone doesn't necessarily process things in the same way. But, let's just talk for a minute about the negative experiences that may have come as a result of COVID-19. Maybe COVID-19 itself was the negative experience, but what were other things happening outside of that stemmed from COVID-19?
Well, for me, at first, COVID really was taking a toll on my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I was not okay. I felt as if I don't want to say that I was, but in my opinion, I was in a very low place. I was depressed somewhat. And because of this, I felt like giving up.
Right.
I felt like, what? School really that important? I don't know. I just really did not want to go through with this because I felt like I'm such a persistent person, and this is really holding me back. I never feel like I was moving forward. I never feel like I was making any moves.
Mm-hmm.
And because I wasn't making any moves, I felt as if, cancel this. I'm not going to move forward with this.
Right.
But then I don't remember. I think it was in June. My perspective really changed. I realized that I really had to adapt. I couldn't change the situation. I couldn't change the environment, the social climate. I really had to adapt to the situation. And I realized that I could make something out of the bad, take something good out of this bad situation and make it my own, create that whole path for myself, because I can't change the fact that COVID is happening.
Right.
But I can make something of myself out of the situation and use it to my advantage. So the fact that I'm at home all the time, I said, okay, let me watch some YouTube, catch up on certain things, even read the Bible. Certain things I didn't even have a chance to do when I was going to school every single day, 24/6, at school all the time, the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So I took time and I read the Bible, and I was doing things that I realized I wasn't doing for a year consistently. So I was like, okay, God, is this you telling me that I need to get closer to you? So I made that, and I decided to make that my journey for this situation, for this whole pandemic. Make that my journey, make that my story, to realize that I have to adapt and try to move on with this and make it a grand story for myself, and not be cooped up with the idea of not moving forward because I'm not going outside physically.
adaptation. There are 2 points you made that I want to come back to. I'm going to come back to them. I hope I remember them. You mentioned spirituality and the idea that even though you're inside, you didn't want to feel like you were stuck necessarily. I'm going to come back to that. But Roxanne, talk to me. What about you? Has there been any negative repercussions because of COVID-19 for you?
Yes, there were a couple of them, to be honest. One of them being, as I mentioned, I experienced some loss in December. I'm always going to go back to that because that was a big thing at that time. So needing to get the things sorted out so the insurance company could do what they needed to do, COVID affected that greatly, especially because you know that the first major spread came out of St. Catherine with the call center,
Right.
and I'm based in St. Catherine. So with the lockdown, I was not able to move back and forth as I needed to. And even though persons were being encouraged to make use of technology, the particular organizations or agencies that I needed to get things done with would not even accept a fax message. They were literally saying to me that I needed to come to them with the physical piece of paper.
Wow.
So can you imagine my frustration needing to get to the place, them not accepting emails, them not accepting fax messages? That was very upsetting for me. Further to that, prior to 2020, I dabble in photography. It started out as a hobby, but there are persons who were encouraging me to perhaps make it a business, and I actually had started considering that. A friend of mine who has a nonprofit organization, she connected me with someone from the Canadian Fund after I did some pictures for her, and I was getting an opportunity to work with them on a project. But because COVID came, that contract got cancelled, so that was very upsetting to me. Yeah. On the spiritual end of things, whew, so it was I had both negative and positive experiences. Negative in the sense that I thought I was at a certain place spiritually, but then when COVID came, churches were shut down, and I had that opportunity to really sit still, not being heavily engaged in church activities as I would have previously been. I was confronted with my true state. We talk about the story of the prodigal son all the time, but the story became more personal to me because I realized within the context of things that in that story, I was the elder brother. So I would have been in the church, carrying on my father's business, but not necessarily having a relationship with him. So when those things were put aside because of COVID, I was confronted with that lack of relationship, and it was very hard to admit, and it was very hard to navigate. So I think in terms of negative experiences, those would have been the 3 main experiences that came up.
Right. I think there's so many people would have had different experiences. I can tell you personally, a couple things happened for me as well. I was supposed to leave the island in May. I was really looking forward to that trip because I knew I needed a break from everything that was happening with school and everything. And because of COVID, I couldn't travel, right? And so that trip was canceled. And I took maybe a month to just be okay with the idea that I wasn't going to be traveling. Also, I finished university this year, and every university graduate is looking forward to graduation. You know, you get to wear the gown, you dress up, you collect your degree, you shake hands with the president and the other people on the stage, your family and your friends are there. And that didn't happen. And along with the whole graduation thing, my entire family would usually come to Jamaica in the summer. And the anticipation was that we would all be together and we would all go to my graduation, and then we would go back to the family home, as we want to call it, and we spent some time together. That didn't happen either, because everybody could not come here. And so I think, you know, those are just 2 of the things, because there's so many things that happened during this COVID period that were really, it was rough. it was hard to deal with. Of course, as both Cassania and Roxanne mentioned, the thoughts, being by yourself, being with yourself, and just having to confront the demons, as you know, others would term it, having to confront those things of yourself that you knew were always there, but you never really had the time to just sit and address them. I'm enjoying the truth in the conversation so far, and we're gonna get a bit further. But before we go anywhere else, we're gonna take a break for a song.
He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. When sorrow seems to surround you, when suffering hangs heavy o'er your head, know that tomorrow brings wholeness and healing. God knows your need, just believe what He said. He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. When what you've done keeps you from moving on, when fear wants to make itself at home in your heart, know that forgiveness brings wholeness and healing. God knows your need, just believe what He said. He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. I once was lost, but God has found me. I was bound up and set free. I've been made righteous in His sight, a display of His splendor all can see. I once was lost, but God has found me, and I was bound up and set free. I've been made righteous in His sight, a display of His splendor all can see. He gives me beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. He gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. Beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. Beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. He gives peace for despair. He gives peace for despair. Peace for despair.
That was such a beautiful item of music. Thank you so much for staying with us at Mind Your Health, where there is no health without emotional health. I'm so glad that you have joined us for this conversation. We're talking about something that is affecting every single human on the planet right now. We are speaking about COVID-19, the pandemic. If you're a part of the conversation so far and you've heard what we've said and you have your own thoughts, go ahead and share with us. Let us know what your experience has been. Just kind of tell us what's been happening with you during this pandemic. This evening I have with me two lovely, lovely young ladies, Cassania and Roxanne. And they're here with me to have this discussion. So we were talking before about, our negative experiences throughout the pandemic, right? But let's look at it in a different light. What have you adopted any like coping strategies throughout this period as a result of the pandemic? I can tell you for me, something I didn't even know I would use as a coping method was media. Right here at the East Jamaica conference, I came to volunteer with no prior experience, no prior knowledge, and it has become an easy coping method. I just leave my house, I come here, of course, all precautions necessary, and I get to just kind of relax for a bit and do God's work. And that for me has been a coping method, one of my coping methods. What about you guys though? What have your coping methods looked like? Have there been any? Are there multiple? Tell me about it.
Well, actually, I haven't mastered that mechanism as yet. I can say that one thing for me was being out of church, because I'm the type to be at church every Saturday, on the pulpit and all these things, and I really didn't have that. And right now I still don't have that.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to handle the idea of not being at church, but one thing I do is sing. So anytime I'm with my friends, when we're in the community together, we sing, and the little vibe that we get from singing brings us back to how we felt while we were in church. So that's one mechanism. A second one for me is actually reading. Right. I don't like to read like that.
Interesting.
Right. Shocking, right? But for this situation, I got myself reading books that I never naturally liked to read. And I started engaging in certain books, and I realized that this is something that works for me. And another coping mechanism I started doing, continuing actually, was that I started painting more often. And that's something that was taken away from me while coming to university. I never had the chance to that because it was consistently schoolwork. And now I have the chance to do art, something that I've been loving from a tender age, and I get the chance to do it, and it's very therapeutic. And that's one of the many ways that I felt, and I reached that part where I was calm, like the eye in the storm, and I felt so comfortable with painting. But when I'm not doing these three things, I just feel as if the world is crashing, because I haven't carried these mechanisms into like my everyday lifestyle. So it's just me choosing a time to do it in the day. It doesn't feel as if it has carried over into my lifestyle as yet. So I'm kind of on the shaking end when it comes on to actually working with these mechanisms, not because of time, but making it a part of my whole like ritual or habit. So I really haven't gotten to that part.
Roxanne, tell me, what has you are a mental health advocate, and I personally sometimes I think as mental health advocates, we have all the right things to say. We know what to tell people to do. We have all of that covered. But what was it like for you having to now actually employ those very things that you're telling others to do?
Leslie, I should tell you that I excel at telling people what to do, but to actually do them myself, horrible at that. So I can't say that I have mastered any particular thing either, even though I know exactly what to do. So it's a case where I will start, but I believe that consistency has been one of my challenges, but I do see improvement. So one of the things that I've had to do is to have a set time when I stop accepting calls, messages, or any such thing from people. Have a set time when I stop engaging with like social media use. But initially, it was a way of escape, so I found that I was spending more hours than I usually do talking to people on WhatsApp, scrolling through Instagram, but then I figured that I can use that time better. So I've been really trying to cut down on the time that I spend doing that, the whole escapism type of thing. Writing has always been fundamental to my life, and so I find that I do write still I don't write as much as I could or should, because there are still a lot of things that I am processing that really needs to come out, but writing is still fundamental. In recent times, God bless my mom, who has been waking me up in the mornings to go for a walk. There are some days when I protest excessively, but even though I don't feel like going, every time I do go, I feel better afterwards. And it's getting to the point now where, because my body is starting to get in motion, it's like when I don't walk, I feel weird. So I find that I protest less every day. So yesterday we actually did a 5K. I protested before the 5K, but after the 5K, I felt like I could have done another one. So that's something that I'm hoping to incorporate some more. I think the biggest coping mechanism for me has been learning to lean into other people. So I've always been the one helping people,
Right.
and help and support has always been accessible to me. But before now, I had concerns of feeling like a burden to people, because sometimes we get caught up in our heads, and you and I would have had a couple conversations where you kind of have an idea of how my mind works. Sometimes I feel like that's too much to lay on other people.
Right.
But I have been learning that the people who genuinely care for me, the people who genuinely love me, the people who genuinely want to engage with all aspects of me, both positive and negative, they are going to constantly be there. So leaning into people, texting or calling somebody and saying I'm not okay, and having people show up has
Right.
been the most effective coping mechanism for me thus far.
That's so interesting. Community. I didn't even think about that when I was thinking about, coping methods, but that's solid right there. Having a community that is there that you can reach out to. And I mean, if you think about it, we're all dealing with it. So I think all of us are looking for, other people so that we can express with. Even last evening, actually, I was on a call with someone, and by the end of the call, we were like, this was kind of a venting session, because we were able to just kind of talk about all that's been happening during this pandemic. But I want to bring up that point that you had mentioned earlier, Kasanya, about spirituality. What has that journey been like for you during this pandemic? Because for some, it may have been a harder journey. For others, that may have been their coping mechanism. What has that journey been like, the spiritual journey that is for you?
Well, honestly, it's a lot of relapsing, I have to say. I get myself and I try to create a habit, because habits form over like 12 days, right? And I'm trying to create this habit of getting up, having a space where I have devotion. And the household that I grew up in, my only person that would push me to be so spiritual or go to church is my grandmother, and she has migrated. So I really don't have that push or that drive to continue getting up in the morning, going on my knees to pray, and forming that schedule, like, mentally. So I felt as if I needed to try to take this up myself, because nobody not got over my back.
Right.
Nobody's going to be over my back, because I realize it's not you and me, it's just me now. There's nobody else, it's just me. Because even if we're laughing and talking and having a great time, when I go home, even if we sleep in the same bed, it's going to be me with my thoughts and me with everything. It's me against everything. So I realized I really had to take up this thing where I had to realize that it's just me. And I tried creating this schedule where I get up in the morning and I pray and I have devotion. Then school come and it backs it out again. Just ruin the whole schedule, ruin the whole thing I was trying to work on. And then I was working during the summer, so that ruined everything again.
Right.
And I tried to do it before school started and didn't work again. So I felt as if I was relapsing, and I felt as if I was not getting anywhere with my process, which I knew that this was a sign from God for me to work on myself. And I've been planning on working myself, but I said, all right, let me postpone this. Let me postpone this. I have to send in this assignment, so let me postpone this. So I took this opportunity to really make it about God, but I realized that I really kept on being pulled back in my habits that I had before. But the fact is, I can say no, I still have some improvement. Why? It's because I know that I have an issue. Right? So before, I never realized that I had an issue like that. I never realized that I was relapsing all the time. I never knew I was doing enough. But now I know that I have an issue. And that's the first step. That's the first step for me to grow, to build myself, to grow spiritually, emotionally, and in all the other alleys.
Right.
And knowing that you have an issue is just for you to start working on how to handle this issue. And that's where I'm currently working on how to handle the issue and trying to move on.
That's really interesting. Because I wanna say, I in my mind, spirituality and, as you said, all the other alleys are, it comes with being intentional. And so even with, I want to say to somebody right now, even with the coping methods, you may not already have a coping method. It comes with being intentional. We always say that being mentally healthy and ensuring that you are doing self-care, it is intentional. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen like that. There has to be some level of intentionality. And so as you might be struggling right now through whatever is happening with you in this pandemic, remember to be intentional about everything that you're doing. Your spiritual life, it's a struggle. Let's be real, it is a struggle. But it literally just takes you getting up and having the willpower to go, okay, I am going to pray right now. I'm going to read the Bible now. And same thing for, before you go to bed, etc. So intentionality is super, super important in this period. Before we go any further in this conversation, though, we will pause at this time for a musical item.
I can speak with the tongues of men and angels, but if I don't have love, I'm just a clanging cymbal. I can have the faith to remove a mountain, but if I don't have love, then I have nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, and love is humble all of the time, not easily angered, enduring the test. So never forget, love is the more excellent way. I can have the gift of prophecy, but if I don't have love, does it profit me? I can understand no mystery, but if I don't have love, it's not enough, you see. Love is patient, love is kind, and love is humble all of the time, not easily angered, enduring the test. So never forget, love is the more excellent way. I can throw my body into the flame, but if I don't have love, I don't have anything. Oh, I could give to the poor everything I own, but a heart without love is just a heart of stone. Love is patient, love is kind, and love is humble all of the time, not easily angered, enduring the test. So
Thank you so much for staying with us at Mind Your Health, where there is no health without emotional health. I'm so happy that you all have joined us this evening as we are discussing the pandemic and all that's been happening through the pandemic. I have Kasanya and Roxanne with me. And I'm so glad that they're able to join me to have this discussion as we really just kind of look at what's been happening in our lives. And if you're in the chat right now, just tell us, share with us what has been your challenge, what has been your joys, anything that's been happening with you. Share that with us right now. Let's all have this discussion. Let's just talk about it. What's been happening during this pandemic? I realize, I know you guys probably weren't ready for this question. I'm just throwing this one at you. But I realize that the both of you are in school and in university at that, right? And I know that the pandemic began in the middle of one semester, and it's still currently happening, and we are almost to the end of another semester. Share with me what your experience has been like through this schooling process, what has been horrible or what has been great, what you've learned. Share that with me.
Okay, so saying from March,
Mhm.
that was my final project for first year at architecture school. So knowing that I was always at school doing work. So actually started the project already. We actually did the site analysis already, and we were getting into the groove of the project, and we were feeling the project. And then boom, March 11, back home. We were at home, and at first I hated it. I hated everything about it. I still hate it. I still hate it. But I realized, as I said before, I have the reason. I have every reason to hate it, but I can't do anything about that. So it was very hard, and it is still very, very much hard. And something that happened, I even forgot to mention, but something happened, and I mean, it's a series of unfortunate events for me. But in the month of July, while I was working and preparing to go back to school, I realized that my Wi-Fi stopped working.
Right.
My Wi-Fi stopped working, and no matter what we were doing, we were trying to contact the company, and they weren't responding the way they should.
Right.
Right? So we were always trying to get everything done, and August done, still no Wi-Fi. We're in November, and I still have no Wi-Fi.
Wow.
Still in November, we still don't have any Wi-Fi. But with this being said, it really proves how hard it was for me starting this new semester. How hard it was for me to log into classes, how hard it was for me to get things done and get work done and engage in my schoolwork. So for me, this really was a test of my patience, test of my persistence, a big test to my spirituality, truly. A test of how bad I wanted this degree, which at sometimes I was wondering if I really wanted it that badly. And I realized that, okay, the Wi-Fi now come back, I have to adapt.
Right.
I had to adapt, and that's what I did. It's still quite unfortunate. It's really a bad situation for me to be placed in at this time. But I realized that I really had to adapt, find somewhere with Wi-Fi, and join my classes. Even though it wasn't consistent, but it was.
Right. And I think if I'm hearing you correctly, it just sounds like you've had to learn to be flexible because you never know what's going to happen.
Truly, and the lecturers love to use that word. Oh my gosh.
Flexible, huh?
They love to. You have to learn to be flexible because you are a student, especially an architecture student. You have to learn to be flexible. And I realized, okay, I'm going to learn to be flexible at this point and do what I have to do to get this degree, because God never bring me so far for me to turn back.
That's it.
Right? So I really need to get this degree. So with the Wi-Fi not being here for
a while,
I realized, okay, sis, you have to get this done regardless, and try to make it the one of your best projects you've done so far. Like, even though you are struggling, mentally, and all the other alleys, you have to prove that no matter the situation or the circumstances that are coming your way, you can still do a great project and come out. But still struggling in school and approaching final exams, still no Wi-Fi, but I'm still here. And that's what matters.
That's it. Roxanne, what has been maybe your greatest lesson from Kasani? I'm hearing she's had to learn to adapt and to find ways to make it work. What has been your experience, your lesson throughout the schooling process during this pandemic?
The biggest lesson during this whole process is I'm learning to stop taking life and myself so seriously. Yeah. So prior to this point in time, going to school, I was always about, oh, I have to get that A, I need to have a certain level GPA. And lately I've been saying to myself, like, God, I'm willing to see my way through. It's at that point of the school year where I'm no longer fussy about whether I get an A or a C. Mind you, I always strive to do my best to work, and my best work usually results in like the A-B range. But I've learned to stop putting so much pressure on myself to walk a particular line, to fit within a particular mold, because at a point in time I had to ask myself, who told me that I needed to have a certain GPA? Who told me that this is the measurement for success?
Right.
So because I got to that place, I realized that I stopped stressing myself out about a lot of the things that I had to do. And because of that, I ended up still getting good grades, because now I'm able to think more clearly. I'm able to get things done in a more relaxed way. And I'm learning a new level of leadership. Leading people when you're seeing them all the time is one thing, but leading people in the virtual space is something totally different. And the most challenging part of that, which is also very good, is learning to lead myself, learning to follow through with the things I say that I'm going to do, leading in consistency, because I cannot talk to people about being consistent if I'm not being consistent. Right. I can't talk to people about showing up for group meetings and presentations and that type of thing if I'm not doing it for myself. Right. So in terms of the learning experience during this time, those two things have been the greatest lessons.
Wow. I love that even though it's a pandemic and it's crazy and other negative things are happening, there are lessons that we can learn from the things that we're experiencing during this pandemic. We're about to wrap up the discussion, but before we do that, let's just have one more item of special music.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul, it is well with my soul, it is well
Wow, wasn't that an amazing item of music? God is truly incredible. Thank you so much for staying with us at Mind Your Health. I'm so glad that you've been able to join us for this discussion this evening. It's been uh I don't know. I don't even know what the word is to use right here, but it's just been so relieving maybe to actually have this conversation about what's been happening during this pandemic for us and what our experiences have been. We're actually about to wrap up. And so if you're just joining us, you can just take a moment. It's going to be here later. You can just go back to the beginning and watch us until you get back to this point. Share with us, continue sharing with us what your experience has been, your challenges, your joys, anything that you want to tell us about your experience during this pandemic. We are all ears for it. So we're wrapping up now. All right, we're at the close of the conversation, and I really want to thank you guys for joining us. But tell me, what has been maybe one positive experience that you've gained throughout this pandemic?
All right. So for me, I've learned a lot of things about myself. Things, as I said before, I've been suppressing for years. Childhood trauma, whatever it is, PTSD that I've been suppressing and hiding behind doing assignments and hiding behind a schedule that I
Right.
have for every day at school. I realized I really had to deal with it. I really had to get things done. I really had to get to know myself a little bit more. And I thought that I knew myself enough. But being in quarantine and being in this situation, I realized that there is more to me than what I knew before.
Right.
And I realized that I'm flexible. I can be very, very flexible. Even though such company is doing what they're doing, I realized that I really have to adapt to the situation
Right.
and make it my own. And I realized that I'm flexible. I'm determined. I'm persistent.
Yeah.
And I've learned these things about myself that whatever I have in front of me, I can get it out of the way. Any obstacle. I knew I was determined at first, but no, this was a test. This was truly a test. Because are you that determined? Let me check. And I really proved that I was that persistent to get through the situation that I'm placed in. And even though it's very much unfortunate, I realized that I'm more to what I thought I was. And I realized I have bad habits, you know, because at first you probably think that you're perfect or you're good enough or whatever. But you realize that you have bad habits that you can work on, bad habits that you need to improve and create ways to work on.
Right.
And learning about yourself during this pandemic is, I think, one of the most important things you can do. Because when you learn about yourself, you know where you are with your relationship with God, your relationship with your parents, relationship with your friends, relationship with yourself.
Right.
And getting to know yourself is the most important thing you can do at this point in your life and in this whole situation.
I love that. Roxanne, talk to me. Tell me, what has been a positive experience or your positive experiences that you've gained throughout this pandemic?
I could have said amen, so let it be as Cass spoke. You mentioned quite a number of things that would have been positive experiences for me. A lot of people who know me with locked hair, right? A part of getting to know myself, a part of developing as a person during this time resulted in me not having long hair anymore. And I'm absolutely loving it. I didn't think I would love it this much. So that getting to know myself has been very big. But I must tell you, Leslie, that there has been relationship building. As I mentioned earlier, I've always had great people around me. I've always had a solid support system, but I wasn't leaning into these persons. So relationship building has been very big during this time. But the relationship that needed the most work was the relationship that I have with God. I'm learning that God is not the person I thought he was. A lot of the preconceived notions that I had of who he is, how he operates, I'm realizing that it's very far from the truth. And right now, he's just a really cool dude that I really want to get to know, and hoping that we can have this deeply intimate relationship because of the things I'm finding out about him. Like even earlier this week, I was returning from Mandeville, and I was having all these negative thoughts as I sometimes battle with these negative things. And in the middle of my thinking, I heard very distinctly, as though it was said by the person sitting next to me, there's really nothing you can do to make me love you more or make me love you less. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And that just changed a lot for me in that moment, because for a very long time, I was saying to my mom that I don't know when God is speaking. Like, he's never really spoken to me. And in that moment, in the middle of me questioning, what is the point of being alive? What is the point of going to school? What is the point of everything? In the middle of that, he said that to me. I'm like, okay, cool. All right. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. And we need to talk. Because I haven't been talking to him much for the past couple months, because I've been so overly concerned with school and so many other things. But that one thing he said brought me to that realization that he's requiring, he wants some intimacy right now, and I'm hoping that I can give that intimacy to him very soon. As a matter of fact, hopefully at the end of this conversation.
Wow. Kasani, you wanted to say something else.
All right. Another thing for me is that I love to worry. I love to worry. I love to fret. Things that don't concern me, I love to worry about. Things that I think my parents should handle, I'm worrying about. And coming into this semester, like last semester too, first year, I didn't know how my school fee was going to be paid. I didn't know how things are going to get through for this semester, especially in a pandemic where work wasn't as certain as it used to be. And everything was quite up and down for both my parents. And I didn't know how it would get done, but I was like, okay, you know, you just have to sign up for the scholarship like last year and cross your heart, you're going to get it. But I was still worrying. right? And I realized in this pandemic, I will learn that God doesn't like when we worry. He really does not like when we worry. He doesn't like when we worry because worrying proves that we don't have enough faith. When you worry about the little situations that you're placed in, it's proving, you're saying to God that you're not big enough. You're not great enough.
Right.
You're not the big man that I thought you were. And you don't want to say that to God. You don't. So I realized that I really need to stop worrying, but I continued worrying regardless. Worrying. I realized my school fee wasn't paid, and this is October, which they have a close off time. So if you don't pay by this time, they add more money, which doesn't make sense to me, but they add more money.
Right.
So they added more money, and I was like, okay, can't do nothing about that. I have to just chill, I have to relax. I can't really do anything about it. November, oh no. And I was like, okay, it was the beginning of November actually. I got a call and they were saying that, okay, Kasania did interview, and I did the interview, and they're like, they'll get back to me. And weeks passed and I still didn't get back a letter or anything. So I was really worrying, continuously worrying, but I was still doing my work. But while I was doing my work, I was like, am I doing this work in vain? Because I'm not even registered for school. But I was still going to the classes. Because my school is small, they understand. So they still put my name down on the list for each course. And I was like, okay, how is this going to get done? I'm worrying again. And then also now I received an email confirming that I got the grant. And I was like, why was I worrying in the first place?
Yeah.
Why was I truly worrying? Because I'm saying to God, you're not the big man. You're not the man that I thought you are. And I really, this situation taught me that worrying about your issues and worrying about the things that you face is you saying to God that you don't have enough faith. And having faith is one of the biggest things you can have when you're trying to have a relationship with God. Having faith with the Lord, having faith and believing in God is the biggest thing you can do. And that experience that I experienced literally last 2 weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, it really shaked me, and it moved me. And it's just really, when I heard her talking her story, I really had to share mine because I almost started to cry. I know I'm emotional, but I almost started to cry because it just really resonated with me because I never used to hear God talk. But when I saw that email, it's like I hear God whisper in my ear and say, oh, you thought.
You doubted me.
You thought. You doubted me, but here's your proof. And right about now, I don't need any more proof.
That's it.
I really don't.
I just want to mention the text that we used for the beginning of this program. It's Psalm 32 verse 7, and it says, thou art my hiding place. Thou shalt preserve me from trouble. Thou shalt compass me about with songs of deliverance. This evening, we've had a discussion about the pandemic, COVID-19, our experience through this pandemic. But I love that you both mentioned such a spiritual note, because it's so clear to us that no matter what's happening, no matter what's happening in the world, God is right there. He is right there with us in the middle of our struggle. I don't want to start preaching. This is not that program, but it's a reminder for all of us that God is there with us. And no matter what our struggles are, whether it is a spiritual struggle, it's a mental struggle, it's a financial struggle, no matter what it is, God is right there with us. I want to just close out this program by saying to everyone that the pandemic is not easy. It's not an easy time for any of us, and we're all learning to adapt, to be flexible. We're learning to lean more on God. We're learning to build our relationships. I know social relationships have been a huge thing in this time, even though we're social distancing. But it's pushing each of us to be more intentional about our mental health, about our emotional health, about how we take time to process things. A part of our health is holistic. And so a part of our emotional health includes all other aspects of our health. Are we eating right? Are we exercising as Roxanne said she's been doing? Are we praying? Are we doing all these things to ensure that we are okay? This is the time for us to take that step, to be intentional. We may not all have more time on our hands, because I know we have like Zoom meetings and we still have like classes on Google Meets, etc. But this is our time to be intentional about our emotional health. And so I'm glad one more time that you have joined us this evening. Thank you so much, Kasane and Roxanne, for being a part of this conversation. You guys have really aided in the conversation. I've enjoyed every single one of your points. And for those who are watching, you can reach out to us. Let us know in the chat, if you please, what's been happening with you, what your struggle has been, and if you need further help, do not hesitate to get it if you need it. Thank you once more for being with us at Mind Your Health, where there is no health without emotional health. Stay tuned. See you next week.
Sometimes your body might betray you, and you may have so much to lose. But if you pay attention and you just take some action, you realize it's all in your mind. It's in your mind, so